It was another endless evening in the underbelly of Manhattan, where the city's pulse throbbed through the veins of the subway system. I, Diana Gaines, a 12-year-old black girl with nothing but the clothes on my back and a tattered backpack slung over my shoulder, had learned to navigate this world like a shadow. For the past 5 days, since Dad's accident at the lab, I'd been drifting from station to station, avoiding the biting cold above ground and scavenging scraps from discarded food wrappers. Grand Central Station, no, Grand Station, as the locals called it during rush hour, was my temporary refuge. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee, hot dogs from vendors, and the metallic tang of rails that never slept. At 6 p.m. sharp, the platform buzzed like a hive. Commuters in crisp suits shoved past families hauling shopping bags, their faces buried in phones or newspapers. The overhead lights flickered slightly, casting harsh shadows on the tiled floors stained with years of foot traffic. I huddled in a corner near the emergency exit, my knees drawn to my chest, clutching Dad's old notebook, the one filled with scribbled formulas and warnings about chemicals that could kill without a sound. It was my only keepsake, a reminder of the man who taught me to see dangers others ignored. That's when it hit me, a faint, sweet bitter scent wafting from the approaching train. Almonds. Bitter almonds. Not the kind from a bakery, but sharp, almost chemical, like the stories Dad used to tell during our rare quiet evenings in our tiny Brooklyn apartment. Diana, he'd say, his voice grave as he adjusted his lab coat, if you ever smell bitter almonds where it doesn't belong, run. Or save who you can. It's cyanide's cousin, organophosphate, silent and deadly in enclosed spaces. My heart pounded. The train rumbled closer, its headlights piercing the tunnel like predator eyes. I scanned the platform, people edging forward, oblivious, ready to board. Panic surged through me like electricity. The smell grew stronger, pinpointed to what looked like car number 3 on the incoming train. No time to think. I bolted from my spot, shoving through the crowd toward the emergency door. Alarms blared as I forced it open, the shrill wail cutting through the din. Hey, kid. Stop, a security guard shouted behind me, but I didn't care. My bare feet hit the cold gravel of the tracks, sharp stones biting into my soles as I sprinted toward the platform edge. Screams erupted from the crowd. What the hell is she doing? A woman yelped, clutching her child. People jumped back, phones whipping out to record. A burly man in a business coat bellowed, "That girl's crazy. She's gonna get herself killed." The train's horn blasted, deafening, its lights blinding as it barreled closer. I waved my arms wildly, my voice raw and desperate. "Get away from there. Don't board car number 3. Don't." The wind from the oncoming train whipped my tangled hair, carrying that damning scent straight into my lungs. I knew it was real, Dad's warnings weren't fairy tales. But as the guards closed in, their boots crunching gravel, I wondered if anyone would believe a homeless black kid like me before it was too late. The guards caught up faster than I expected, their heavy boots slamming into the gravel like hammers. One grabbed my arm, twisting it behind my back, while the other shoved me face down onto the cold, jagged tracks. Pain exploded through my elbow and knees, the stones digging into my skin like tiny knives. I tasted blood in my mouth from where my lips split against the rail, but I didn't cry out. Not yet. "This girl's lost her mind," the first guard bellowed, his voice echoing off the tunnel walls. "A dangerous homeless kid, call the cops now." I struggled just enough to lift my head, gasping, "The smell, it's in car 3. Don't let anyone on." But my words were drowned out by the train's final screech as it pulled into the station, doors hissing open. The guards yanked me up roughly, dragging me back toward the platform edge. My bare feet scraped raw against the ties, leaving smears of dirt and blood. Commuters stared, some backing away in disgust, others murmuring under their breath. A young woman in heels clutched her purse tighter, whispering to her friend, "What's wrong with her?" She's gonna cause a scene. Then he appeared, a tall man in an expensive suit, his tie perfectly knotted, a shiny badge on his lapel marking him as some high-up in the transit authority. White guy, mid-40s, with that polished look of someone who never worried about where his next meal came from. He strode over like he owned the place, his face twisted in annoyance. What the hell is going on here? Get that kid out, toss her topside. She's disrupting the whole line. If this delays the schedule, we'll have lawsuits flying from every pissed-off rider. I twisted in the guard's grip, my voice cracking but steady. Sir, please listen, there's a gas leak or something in car 3. I smelled it, like bitter almonds. It's dangerous. My heart raced, Dad's warnings flooding back, enclosed spaces, invisible toxins, symptoms starting with nausea and bleeding. But the suit guy just laughed, a sharp, mocking bark that made my stomach twist. Gas. Almonds. Kid, the only smell here is the sore stink coming off you from a mile away. Don't play hero with your made-up stories. We've got protocols, no alarms, no issues. The crowd erupted in whispers and nods. Fingers pointed at me, eyes narrowing. An older lady in a coat shook her head, saying loud enough for everyone, outrageous. But she doesn't even look crazy. Probably faking it for attention or handouts. A guy nearby chuckled, yeah, these street kids are clever. Bet she's got a sob story ready for the cops. Each word stung like salt in my wounds, reminding me how invisible I was, how my black skin and ragged clothes made me a liar before I even opened my mouth. Inside, rage boiled with fear. They weren't just ignoring me, they were erasing me. But I bit back tears, focusing on the open doors of car 3, praying no one stepped in. I stopped fighting. The guards' grips loosened slightly as they hauled me fully onto the platform, my body limp like a ragdoll tossed aside. My ribs ached from the impact, and the metallic taste of blood lingered on my tongue, but I didn't make a sound. What was the point? They'd already decided who I was, a troublemaking kid, not worth listening to. The crowd's murmurs faded into a dull hum around me, their stares prickling my skin like needles. I lay there on the gritty floor, staring up at the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, my breath coming in shallow bursts. But then my eyes locked on her, a little girl, no more than 4, clutching her mom's hand tightly. She had pigtails bouncing as they shuffled toward the open doors of car 3, the mom's face distracted, scrolling on her phone. The child looked innocent, wide-eyed at the train's shiny exterior, oblivious to the invisible danger lurking inside. My heart twisted like a knife in my chest. If they stepped in. No. I couldn't let that image form. The wind from the idling train gusted stronger now, carrying that insidious bitter almond scent straight to me, sharper than before, clinging to my nostrils like a warning I couldn't ignore. Dad's voice echoed in my head, clear as if he were right there beside me. Diana, bitter almonds mean run or save who you can. It's not just a smell, it's a signal. In labs like mine, it means something's gone wrong, something that steals breath before you even know it's there. He'd said it during one of our late-night talks, his hands stained with chemicals, eyes tired from hours under fluorescent lab lights. 5 days ago, that same smell had taken him, an accident they called it, but I knew better. He'd been working on those compounds, the kind governments hide away. And now, here it was, seeping into the subway like a ghost from his world into mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, a single tear escaping and tracing a warm path down my dirt-streaked cheek. It wasn't for the pain in my body, it was for them, for the little girl, for everyone too busy judging me to see the real threat. The guards were muttering about calling child services, their radios crackling with reports of my disruption. But I didn't respond. Silence was my only weapon left. When I opened my eyes again, I didn't look at the guards or the sneering suit guy. My gaze fixed on car 3, boring into its open maw as if I could will it shut with sheer force. It was a final, wordless plea. See what I see. Smell what I smell. Before it's too late. The platform noise swelled, announcements blaring for boarding, footsteps shuffling forward. But in that moment, my quiet stare felt like a scream no one heard. Yet. The plastic zip ties bit into my wrists like teeth, cutting off circulation as the guards dumped me onto the cold metal bench in the emergency waiting area. My arms throbbed, pins and needles shooting up to my shoulders, but I kept my mouth shut, focusing on steady breaths to push down the rising nausea from that lingering chemical whiff. One guard, the burly one with a mustache, barked into his radio, his voice clipped and official, confirming, female subject, black, around 12, showing signs of agitation and possible mental instability. Secured and awaiting backup. The platform crowd didn't disperse right away. They lingered like vultures, their eyes darting between me and the idling train, whispers turning into outright commentary. A middle-aged man in a Yankees cap leaned toward his buddy, speaking loud enough for half the station to hear. Bet this is some new scam for cash or viral fame on TikTok. These homeless types are getting smarter every day, causing chaos to get noticed. His friend nodded vigorously, adding fuel. Yeah, spotted her kind loitering at Lexington stop last week. They know how to game the system, dodging shelters and pulling stunts like this for sympathy or handouts. More voices chimed in, a chorus of judgment that made my skin crawl. A woman in business attire, her earrings glinting under the lights, crossed her arms and scoffed. Look at her dirty clothes, wild eyes. Probably high on something. Why else would a kid pull that nonsense? Nearby, a young guy with earbuds half in chuckled, classic attention grab. If she really thought there was danger, she'd have told someone calmly instead of acting out. Now the whole line's backed up because of her. Each barb landed like a punch to my gut, twisting deeper than the ties on my hands. I'd heard it all before, since Dad vanished in that lab mishap, leaving me to fend alone on these unforgiving streets. People like them saw my dark skin and frayed jacket as a label. Trouble, liar, burden. Never a girl who'd lost everything, who knew things from books and late-night lessons that could save lives. My chest tightened, anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I swallowed it. Fighting back with words would only make it worse. They'd twist that too. Instead, I stared at the floor, counting the cracks in the tiles, willing the world to see the truth before more innocents paid for their blindness. The radio crackled again, cops en route. Time was running out, and so was the air in car 3. The zip ties dug deeper with every shift of my weight on that unforgiving bench, my fingers going numb as circulation faded. The platform's chaos simmered down to a tense murmur, the train still humming idly like a beast waiting to pounce. I lifted my head slowly, scanning the guards' faces, one young and fidgety, the other older, with graying temples and a weary slump to his shoulders. He seemed less eager to manhandle me, his eyes flicking between the crowd and the open doors of car 3. Maybe he was the one I could reach. I caught his gaze, holding it steady despite the ache in my neck. My voice came out soft, almost a whisper, but clear enough to cut through the ambient noise. Sir, if you notice someone boarding car 3 and they start bleeding from the nose out of nowhere, hit the emergency stop. Just one person like that, don't wait for more. It'll spread fast. He flinched, his brow furrowing as if my words had poked some hidden doubt. For a split second, I saw it, a flicker of uncertainty in those tired eyes, like he'd glimpsed the truth behind my calm. He shifted his weight, glancing at the train as passengers began edging forward again, the announcement crackling overhead urging them to board. But then he shook his head, his expression hardening back to routine dismissal. Listen, kid, I've been patrolling these tunnels for 19 years. I know the drills inside out, fires, fights, false alarms. Don't try schooling me on security protocols. You're just stirring up trouble. His words landed heavy, a fresh wave of disappointment crashing over me like the subway drafts that whipped through the station. I wanted to scream about Dad's research, the way he'd drilled those signs into me during our makeshift lessons over takeout in our cramped kitchen. But I held back, biting my lip until it stung. Yelling wouldn't help, it'd only paint me as more unhinged in their eyes. Instead, I leaned back against the bench, the cold metal seeping through my thin jacket, and let silence settle. I knew the truth, that bitter almond tang was no hallucination. Kids like me, with sharper senses dulled by years of city grime and adult skepticism, could detect what they missed. Dad had explained it once. Younger noses picked up volatile compounds others ignored. If only this guard would listen before symptoms hit harder. The fidgety guard snorted, turning away to radio for updates, but the older one lingered a moment longer, his hand hovering near his belt. I didn't push. My quiet warning hung in the air between us, a fragile thread in the growing tension. The platform clock ticked forward 90 seconds to departure. My pulse raced, praying he'd see the signs soon. The doors of car 3 slid open with a pneumatic hiss, inviting the next wave of passengers like a trap baited and set. I watched from my spot on the bench, my bound hands trembling slightly not from fear, but from the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The older guard stood nearby, his posture rigid, radio clipped to his belt as if ready for more excuses to ignore me. Commuters surged forward, eager to escape the platform's crush, their footsteps echoing like a stampede. First in line was a middle-aged man in a blue button-down shirt, his briefcase swinging at his side. He looked ordinary, tired eyes, slight paunch, the kind of guy who commuted daily without a second thought. He stepped up confidently, crossing the threshold into the car. For a heartbeat, everything seemed normal. Then he froze mid-stride, his face draining of color until it matched the pale station tiles. A hand flew to his nose as blood trickled out, dark red against his skin. He staggered backward, nearly tripping over the gap, his voice weak and confused. "What? There's some weird smell in there. Makes me queasy, like I'm gonna throw up." He collapsed onto the platform edge, clutching his face, blood staining his collar. The crowd's forward momentum halted abruptly, a ripple of confusion spreading like wildfire. "What's happening to him?" a woman gasped, pulling her companion back. "Is he having a stroke?" Another voice, sharper. "Maybe the heat got to him, subway cars are ovens this time of day." Whispers turned to urgent murmurs. Low blood pressure? Or allergies? People craned their necks, some pulling out masks from pockets, others edging away from car 3 as if it might bite. The older guard's head snapped toward the scene, his earlier dismissal cracking just a fraction. He glanced at me, eyes narrowing in that mix of doubt and dawning unease. I didn't meet his stare. Instead, I leaned forward slightly, my voice a low mutter meant only for myself but loud enough to carry in the sudden hush. "That's the first one." My words hung there, a quiet prophecy amid the growing panic. Inside, my mind raced, Dad's notes flashing in memory. Initial exposure hits the mucous membranes first, bleeding, disorientation, then worse in confined air. The platform clock ticked mercilessly, 60 seconds to go. The man's groans amplified the tension, and for the first time, a few passengers hesitated at the doors, their blind trust fracturing. I sat still, heart hammering, knowing this was just the beginning if they didn't act soon. The suit guy's face twisted into a mask of fury as the fallen man's groans cut through the platform's uneasy hush. He stormed forward, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the tiles, shoving past a cluster of hesitant commuters like they were obstacles in his path. His badge caught the light, a symbol of authority that made my stomach churn. "What the hell is this delay?" he snapped at the guards, his voice booming over the idling train's hum. "One guy with a nosebleed? That's not an emergency, could be allergies, stress, anything. Get this line moving." He snatched his radio from his belt, thumbing the button with practiced aggression. Control, this is Supervisor Harlan. No confirmed medical alert, no detected toxins. We're not shutting down over some random bleed-out. Do not let a street kid's hysteria grind this artery to a halt. Resume boarding now. His words crackled through the speakers overhead, echoing like a decree from on high. The younger guard nodded eagerly, but the older one hesitated, his grip on my arm slackening just a fraction as he eyed the bleeding man being helped to a bench. Harlan turned his glare on me, his eyes cold and calculating, like I was a glitch in his perfect schedule. And you, get her out of here. Drag her if you have to. We don't need liabilities like this gumming up operations. The guards obeyed without question. The younger one yanked my bound wrists upward, forcing me to my feet with a jolt that sent fire through my shoulders. I stumbled, my bare toes scraping the rough platform surface, but they didn't let up. The older guard joined in, his hand clamping my elbow as they hauled me toward the exit stairs. Every step was agony, my knees buckled from earlier bruises, fresh scrapes opening on my shins as they pulled me along like dead weight. The crowd parted, some averting their eyes in discomfort, others snapping photos with their phones, turning my humiliation into digital fodder. Move it, kid, the younger guard growled, his breath hot on my neck. Wind gusted from the train's vents as we passed Car 3, slamming that acrid, cloying vapor into my face stronger than ever, a nauseating wave that made my vision blur and my throat tighten. It wasn't just a scent anymore, it felt like fingers squeezing my lungs, a harbinger of what awaited those still boarding. Inside, panic clawed at my chest, raw and unrelenting. They were ignoring the signs, the bleed, the unease rippling through the air, all because of me, the problem they needed to erase. My mind screamed for them to stop the train, but my lips stayed sealed, saving my strength. Harlan watched us go, already turning back to wave passengers onward, his radio buzzing with confirmations. The stairs loomed ahead, each drag pulling me farther from the danger I alone seemed to grasp. If they didn't act soon, that wind would carry death to everyone left behind. As they dragged me closer to the exit stairs, the platform's tension shifted like a storm cloud breaking. The younger guard's fingers dug into my arm, his pace quickening as if to outrun the unease building behind us. My vision blurred from the rough handling, spots dancing in my eyes, but I caught glimpses over my shoulder, the bleeding man slumped on the bench, his shirt now a mess of crimson, surrounded by a growing knot of concerned faces. Whispers escalated into audible questions. Should we call an ambulance? Is it contagious? Then she appeared, a woman in her 60s, dressed in faded scrubs with a nurse's badge pinned crookedly to her chest. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she moved with the purposeful stride of someone who'd seen emergencies in ERs and clinics. She knelt beside the man without hesitation, pulling a small flashlight from her pocket to shine into his eyes. "Hold still, sir," she said firmly, her voice carrying authority honed from years in the field. She checked his pulse, then tilted his head back gently. "This isn't just a nosebleed. Pupils are unevenly dilated, breathing's shallow and irregular. I've seen this pattern before, back when I worked lab shifts handling hazmat exposures. Something's off in the air here." She stood abruptly, her gaze sweeping the platform until it landed on Car 3's open doors. A faint frown creased her forehead as she sniffed subtly, then turned toward the guards hauling me away. Her eyes narrowed on me, not with pity or scorn, but sharp assessment. "That girl over there," she dashed onto the tracks just to warn everyone. She wasn't frantic or showboating, she was deliberate. What if she knows something we don't? Kids sometimes pick up on things adults miss, finer senses, less jaded. The older guard slowed his steps, his hold on my elbow loosening as her words sank in. He glanced back at the train, doubt etching lines on his face. "You serious?" But the supervisor said no alerts. His voice trailed off, uncertain now. The younger one snorted dismissively, but even he paused, the radio in his hand forgotten mid-transmission. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like a wave gaining strength. A couple nearby exchanged worried looks. She's a nurse, she'd know if it's serious. Another voice, from a man holding a coffee cup. The kid did yell about car 3 specifically. And now this guy, coincidence? People who'd been inching toward the doors halted, some retreating a step or two, phones raised not just to record but to search symptoms online. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt a spark of something like hope flicker in my chest, fragile, but real. They were questioning now, not just me, but the rush to dismiss. My warnings, buried under layers of bias, were finally burrowing through. If this nurse could sway them, maybe the tide would turn before more fell victim. I stayed silent, letting her advocacy speak, my bound hands a stark reminder of how close we'd come to disaster. The guard's relentless pull yanked me toward the stairs, each jerk sending jolts through my bruised limbs like electric shocks. My vision swam with the station's harsh glare, the nurse's voice fading behind us as she urged action. The younger one's sneer was etched in my periphery. Keep moving, troublemaker, we're done with your games. But something snapped inside me, a surge of desperation fueled by Dad's memory, his face flashing in my mind, serious, protective, gone too soon from that sealed lab where secrets turned lethal. I twisted sharply, digging my heels into the tiles despite the pain ripping up my calves. My voice erupted, raw and piercing, cutting through the platform's din like a siren. Stop this train right now. My dad died from that stuff in the lab yesterday. He told me if it leaks, adults won't smell it, only kids can pick it up. The words hung in the air, explosive and unfiltered, freezing the scene like a snapshot. The guards halted mid-stride, their holds slackening in shock. The younger one whipped around, his face paling. What did you just say? But I didn't repeat it. The impact was already rippling outward. The platform fell eerily quiet, the usual subway rumble now a backdrop to stunned silence. Heads turned, eyes widening, not in mockery anymore, but raw astonishment. A young mother near the doors clutched her toddler closer, her whisper carrying. She might have sensed something we couldn't. Kids have keener noses, right? Beside her, a businessman in a trench coat muttered to his colleague, her dad a scientist. That explains the almond thing. What if it's real? Murmurs built like a gathering storm. Bitter almonds, that's cyanide or worse. Why would a kid make that up? If she's right, we're all in danger. The nurse nodded vigorously from her spot by the stricken man, her voice amplifying. Listen to her. I've treated exposure cases, this fits. Gone were the sneers and side eyes. In their place, a wave of unease swept the crowd. People who'd dismissed me as a nuisance now retreated from the doors, phones raised not to mock but to alert others. The older guard released my arm entirely, his expression crumbling into regret, while Harlan, the supervisor, froze mid-command, his radio dangling forgotten. For the first time, I felt the shift like invisible chains breaking. My revelation had cracked their certainty, turning suspicion into belief. Inside, triumph mixed with grief. Dad's knowledge, his final gift, was saving them. But as the clock ticked toward departure, I prayed it wasn't too late. The air grew thicker, that unseen poison lurking, waiting to claim its next victim. The alarm pierced the air like a knife, sharp, insistent beeps from a handheld detector one of the technicians had finally pulled from his kit. The device flashed red, its screen glowing with urgent warnings as the man holding it staggered back a step. Positive. Organophosphate trace, low molecular weight, airborne. His shout cut through the stunned hush, raw panic in his voice. Evacuate. Seal car 3 now. Chaos erupted in a heartbeat. The platform lights shifted to emergency mode, bathing everything in stark crimson. Sirens wailed from hidden speakers, and the train's doors slammed shut with a metallic thud that echoed like a final judgment. Passengers who'd been frozen in place now surged backward, tripping over bags and each other, their faces pale masks of disbelief. The older guard released my arm completely, his hands shaking as he fumbled for his radio. Harlan, the supervisor, stood rooted, mouth open, his earlier confidence shattered. Less than 30 seconds later, heavy boots pounded down the stairs, a rapid response team in full biohazard suits, visors fogging slightly from their hurried breaths. They moved with military precision, deploying barriers and sealing off the car with yellow tape that snapped taut. The team leader, a tall figure with a CDC patch on his shoulder and the insignia of a lieutenant colonel, barked orders through his mask's filter: full lockdown. Di-tan-tone Bosangar Car 3 contains low-level organophosphate, potential for asphyxiation in enclosed spaces. No re-entry until cleared. The words landed like stones in water, rippling outward. People gasped, some covering their mouths instinctively, others clutching loved ones as they were herded toward exits. I sat motionless on the bench, wrists still bound, watching the scene unfold in a daze. The chemical scent was overwhelming now, thick and cloying, but the team's arrival felt like a lifeline, proof that my warnings hadn't been delusions. My chest heaved with ragged breaths, tears stinging my eyes not from pain but from the sheer relief that someone finally believed. The colonel scanned the area, his gaze sweeping over the chaos until it settled on me. He paused, tilting his head as if piecing together fragments. The platform emptied rapidly, footsteps thundering upstairs, leaving only the hum of ventilation and the faint crackle of radios. For the first time since this nightmare began, the air felt less like a threat and more like a battlefield where truth had finally claimed ground. The colonel approached me with measured steps, his biosuit crinkling like plastic in the wind. I remained slumped on the bench, wrists raw from the ties, my body a canvas of aches and exhaustion. The platform felt like a ghost town now, echoes of hurried evacuations fading into the tunnels. He knelt to my level, his visor reflecting my dirt-smeared face, a 12-year-old black girl who'd been treated like a criminal for daring to speak up. "What's your name, young lady?" His tone was steady, professional, lacking the edge of dismissal I'd grown used to. "Diana. Diana Gaines," I whispered, my voice hoarse from shouting, throat tight from the lingering fumes that still prickled my sinuses. He nodded once, pulling a tablet from his utility belt. His gloved fingers tapped rapidly, pulling up databases I could only imagine, secure networks linking labs, agencies, and missing persons files. Seconds stretched like hours as he scanned the results, his posture stiffening. A low whistle escaped his filter. "Good Lord, you're the daughter of Dr. Maxwell Gaines, lead researcher on classified biocompounds at the federal facility. Reported missing after an incident 5 days ago, presumed deceased in a containment breach." The words hit me like a fresh wound, confirmation of what I'd suspected but couldn't face alone on the streets. Dad gone, his warnings now my inheritance. Tears welled unbidden, blurring the colonel's outline. He straightened, signaling to the remaining guards with a sharp gesture. "Cut those restraints immediately. This child isn't a threat, she's the hero here." The older guard fumbled with a knife, slicing through the plastic with trembling hands. Relief flooded my limbs as blood rushed back, tingling painfully, but I didn't rub my wrists. I just sat there, absorbing the shift, the air no longer thick with suspicion, but charged with revelation. The colonel placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, his voice softening through the mask. "You saved them all, Diana. Your father's work, that compound leaks silently, undetectable to most adults. But you caught it. How?" I met his eyes, steady despite the grief. "He taught me. The signs, the smells. I couldn't let it happen again." Whispers spread among the team, techs in suits exchanging nods, one muttering about protocols and overlooked alerts. Harlan hovered nearby, his face ashen, but the colonel ignored him, focusing on me. For once, I wasn't invisible or dismissed. I was seen, believed. The weight of the past hours lifted slightly, replaced by a quiet vindication. Dad's legacy had turned the tide not through force, but through one girl's unyielding truth. The colonel's words still echoed in my ears as the team swarmed Car 3, their suits a blur of white and yellow against the dim platform lights. I flexed my freed wrists, the skin chafed and red, but the sting felt distant now, like a fading echo of the ordeal. The air hummed with urgency, techs sealing vents, monitors beeping confirmations of the toxin levels climbing. Harlan, the sharp-suited overseer who'd orchestrated my removal, lingered at the edge of the cordon, his once commanding stance crumbling. His face had lost all color, turning ashen like forgotten paper, eyes darting between the bio team and me. He shuffled closer, his expensive loafers scuffing the tiles awkwardly, hands fidgeting with his tie as if it choked him. I had no idea, he stammered, his voice cracking, stripped of its earlier bark. Thought you were just causing trouble. A kid like that, in a place like this. The excuses trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor, unable to meet mine. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool draft from the tunnels, and he swallowed hard, the reality sinking in that his rush to clear the line could have doomed dozens. I didn't reply. No words came, none were needed. Instead, I turned my eyes to the quarantined car, its doors now locked tight, caution tape fluttering like warning flags. Inside, faint shadows of residue clung to the windows, invisible killers I'd sensed when no one else could. The weight of what almost happened pressed on me, families separated, lives snuffed out in silence. Harlan shifted uncomfortably, mumbling something about protocols and oversights, but it dissolved into the background noise of radios and footsteps. Then the older guard approached, his cap removed and clutched in his hands like a relic. He bowed his head slightly, the lines on his face deeper now, etched with remorse. You picked up on something none of us did, he said quietly, his tone heavy with humility. That scent you mentioned, we're trained for obvious threats, not this. You were right all along. His eyes met mine briefly, filled with a quiet respect that replaced the earlier skepticism. He didn't wait for forgiveness, perhaps he knew it wasn't mine to give so easily. Around us, the team wrapped up initial containment, their movements efficient but somber. Harlan backed away, shoulders slumped, vanishing into the shadows of the stairwell, a man diminished, his authority exposed as fragile. I stayed seated, drawing a deep breath free of that toxic taint, the platform's emptiness a testament to survival. In that moment, vindication tasted bittersweet, laced with the ghosts of judgment I'd endured. 3 hours dragged on like an eternity in that sealed-off station, the once bustling hub now a sterile zone of caution tape and humming equipment. The bio team had contained the leak, their suits retreating into vans as air quality readings stabilized. Word had spread like wildfire through the evacuated crowds outside. A homeless black girl had averted a bio-disaster, her instincts sharper than any sensor. Whispers of my name, Diana Gaines, floated in the air, mixed with apologies from officials who'd arrived too late to doubt. The colonel himself assigned an escort from his unit, 2 agents in plain clothes flanking me as we moved toward the surface exits. A thin emergency blanket draped my shoulders, its foil crinkling with each step, warding off the chill that had seeped into my bones. My bare feet, still sore and crusted with grime, padded softly on the escalator stairs, leaving faint prints behind. The platform below receded, its empty benches and shadowed rails a graveyard of what could have been where I'd been bound, dragged, and ridiculed amid indifferent stares. I didn't glance back. No need to revisit the spot where they'd pinned me down, their knees on my back, voices branding me a liar. The escalator hummed upward, carrying me from that pit of judgment into the fading evening light above. Street noise filtered down, horns blaring, voices calling as we emerged onto the bustling Manhattan sidewalk. Passers-by gawked at the cordoned entrance, some recognizing me from hasty news alerts on their phones. But I kept my gaze fixed ahead, steps deliberate and unhurried, shedding the weight of their earlier scorn like shedding old skin. In that ascent, I left behind not just the station, but the echoes of dismissal, the guards' rough hands, Harlan's sneers, the crowd's cold detachment. My ragged clothes and dark complexion had marked me unworthy once. Now, they were badges of survival. The city lights blurred through unshed tears, but I walked on, chin lifted, embracing the freedom of being seen at last. The next day dawned with a frenzy I could never have imagined, my face plastered across screens from Times Square billboards to kitchen TVs in Brooklyn. The security footage had leaked overnight, grainy clips of me being wrestled to the ground, my desperate shouts about the toxin, and the bioteam's frantic arrival. It exploded online, hashtags like #unheardhero and #subwaysavior trending before breakfast. Reporters swarmed the station's perimeter, microphones thrusting at anyone who'd witnessed the near catastrophe. I huddled in a temporary foster placement arranged by social services, a bland room with beige walls and a flickering TV. Flipping channels, I landed on a national news segment, the anchor's polished voice filling the space. She was a sharp-dressed woman with perfect highlights, her expression grave as clips of the chaos played behind her. "This isn't merely an inspiring tale of bravery," she intoned, leaning forward as if confiding in viewers. "It's a stark indictment of our biases." A 12-year-old black girl, homeless and dismissed as delusional, single-handedly prevented a mass poisoning. But ask yourself, if she were a white child in clean clothes, from a respectable family, would authorities have heeded her warnings sooner? Would she have been restrained, ignored, and humiliated before proof emerged? Her words struck deep, mirroring the thoughts I'd buried during those agonizing minutes on the platform. Commentators piled on, experts dissecting systemic racism, psychologists explaining how appearances skew credibility. One guest, a civil rights advocate, nodded solemnly. "Diana Gaines embodies the overlooked voices in our society. Her father's expertise saved lives through her, yet prejudice nearly silenced it." Social media buzzed with shares, debates raging, some defending the guards' caution, others calling for investigations into transit protocols. Watching it unfold, a mix of numbness and quiet fire stirred in me. The world was finally listening not just to the facts, but to the injustice woven into them. Dad's death, my isolation, the street's harsh lessons, they'd forged this moment. Yet the anchor's question lingered, a painful echo. How many more like me went unheard every day? A week later, I stood before the newly installed bronze plaque at Grand Station, its surface gleaming under the platform lights like a quiet beacon. The station had reopened, crowds flowing as if nothing had changed, but the air felt different, lighter, marked by my story. Engraved in elegant script, for the girl who heard what no one heard, smelled what no one smelled, and believed in herself when no one else did. Below, my name etched simply, Diana Gaines, 12 years old, daughter of Dr. Maxwell Gaines. Survivor. Warner. I traced the letters with my fingertip, the cool metal grounding me amid the rush of commuters. No more bare feet on gravel. Foster care had provided shoes, clean clothes, a bed. Yet the plaque wasn't just tribute, it was a mirror, reflecting the strength Dad instilled in me during those shadowed evenings poring over his notes. That bitter almond aroma wasn't merely poison, it symbolized the hidden power in the overlooked, the voices society mutes until crisis forces them to listen. Each revisit stirred a quiet resolve. I'd carry his lessons forward, ensuring no one else faced silence in the face of peril. The plaque stood eternal, a reminder that even the smallest, most dismissed, could rewrite fates.